I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Krysta Rodriguez, who plays none other than Liza Minnelli in the new Netflix limited series Halston. And Krysta, you're from the theater. Broadway's kind of like your home, and the theater is your home. So I would imagine that when you're going to play Liza Minnelli, there has to be a combination of emotions.
Yes.
Where do those emotions begin?
Well, they begin, it's like the stages of grief. Like at first it was bargaining, where when I was waiting to get the part, I was like, you know, if I get this, I will work so hard, really trying to say, okay, like if I survive this, I'll give up smoking. It was like that. It was like, if you give me this, I will do my best to rise to this. And then when I did, it was such a triumph. I couldn't believe it. And then it's like 24 hours of joy, and then a year and a half of abject terror. And that's sort of where I'm sort of back on the joy now that it's been out, and I've been able to get some great feedback from people who love the show, and who have been moved by the performances. So I'm starting. My shoulders are starting to lower down just a little bit, but other than that, no, it was really really daunting, and I think I knew it would be daunting, but thought it wouldn't. It was never possible. Just you can say yes, I'd love to climb Mount Everest. That would be really hard to do. But then someone buys you the ticket. You got to figure out how to get to the top. So that's sort of how it was.
And so when you approach a part like this, it would be so easy to just, try and do a simple imitation. So what was your kind of game plan going into this? How did you want to try to make this authentic to who Liza is, but also, not just have it be like just a mere impression?
Right. It's funny because people say that like it'd be easy to do an impersonation, but like I don't do impersonations, so it actually would be harder. Like if you wanted me to do a dead on Liza, it would be a lot more difficult for me to do. So I'm glad I didn't have to do that. I'm glad that wasn't what the assignment was. So because that would have been way harder. What I did get to do is recreate the emotion of two people, the relationship between two best friends who are ride or die, who go through their entire lives together, their adult lives together, and recreate the sort of the what do I want to say, the tenacity that it takes to be Liza Minnelli, the tenacity it takes to be any Broadway performer, any performer at all. So those are the things that I could relate to, and that's what I grasped onto. And then I was able to talk to a few people, very well known. Like I worked with John Lithgow on a TV show. He was one of the first people that I emailed about this because he had done such a great job recreating Winston Churchill, and he sort of gave me that exact same advice, which is like people don't want to see the impersonation. They want to see what you bring to the part, and to allow yourself to find enough that feels recognizable, that at least gets you in that groove, that puts you in the right place, and then show your heart from there. So I tried to take those words to heart the whole time.
And from a purely technical standpoint, because you also sing
Mhm.
as Liza here, and so just from a sheer vocal standpoint, what kind of work did you do vocally to create your own version of Liza?
Yeah. The honestly, the cadence of her voice was a little bit harder to get than the singing part of it. What is interesting though is that I had been singing maybe this time my whole life. It's like one of my I always wanted to play Sally Bowles in cabaret. It's just it always ends up in one of my solo shows. So what was interesting was to like take what I love about that song and then have, and not, well, I don't sing it in the show, but I sang it for the audition. That was one of the audition things, was to start to pull my experiences out and put them through the lens of her experiences, which was really the important part. So that was actually really fun to figure out what I do, what she does, and what where we can meet somewhere in between. But yeah, I worked with a dialect coach. Ewan and I actually had the same coach, Liz Himmelstein, and she was able to help with things like the cadence of the speaking, and where like Liza a lot laughs through her talking, and that's the kind of stuff that was trampolines for me, the thing that could bounce me into the character. So as far as vocally singing the stuff, I just was able to hear it so often, and those things were really a lot easier to recreate than the stuff we've never seen of her, which was, you know, the stuff I got to create from scratch.
Yeah, and I would. I think I read that the first thing that you shot was the Liza with a Z
Yeah,
performance.
yeah,
So talk about right into the frying pan.
yeah,
Um, um, Take us through filming that sequence. How much of that was the vocals pre-recorded and
yeah.
but what was
So
that
we
experience of performing that as your first time out?
Yeah, it was really cool because yeah, I did pre-record it. They have a great music team over at the show, and I had a music director, and we worked on how we wanted to do it. And we sent it to them, and they sent back and said faster. And then we redid it, and we sent it to them, and they said faster. So it was great to be able to have that real, like a real rehearsal process where we're honing the right version of it. Lay it down once, and then that's off the plate. Now the next step is the physicality, the, you know, the performance, the calibration of where she is in her life, and how many times she sung this song, and how many times she will sing this song, and where she is in her life right now, what it means to her and to the audience. So it became the acting exercise, which is always a way to get you out of your head. But again, I'm a musical theater performer. I actually feel most at home with a spotlight and an audience. And so it was a lot easier to do a number where you're going to get applause at the end than it is to sit in a really emotional scene and hope you're getting it, and hope, you know, that emotional connection comes across. So for me, it was a really actually merciful way to enter into the world of Liza. And it was, you know, we shot that series some pre-COVID, some post during COVID, and mid-COVID, I would say. And so that was one of the scenes I got to do live, with truly 100 people in the room, with a lot of energy and excitement. And it was the first time Ewan was seeing me perform. It was the first time David, who played Joe Eula, was seeing me perform, and the crew and everybody. So it really was a great, like, how do you do to the group, and hope that they, you know, enjoyed it. I got to entertain my new friends, which was great.
And of course, you know, you and Ewan play, you know, almost so many of your scenes together, and it's
Yeah.
oftentimes just the two of them. So, what was that working relationship like with Ewan
It
McGregor?
was spectacular. I mean, I can't say enough good things about him, and I will say it till the end of time. He was so generous, so lovely. You know, and I had mentioned this earlier in another interview, was that the um, the burden of that falls on him because he's he's the famous one. He's the star of the show. He's the title. He's number one. And if he wasn't able to accept somebody else into that space, that would have to be my job to say, okay, I have to create this without that. But he immediately made it clear he was willing to go on that ride. And that was such a relief for me, which takes that onus off of me stepping on somebody's toes or trying to worm my way into a place I'm not welcome. So as soon as that became clear, we were off to the races, and we had a great time working together, and by the end really had an affinity for each other, and for our characters. The way our characters loved each other, we really understood that relationship.
It is so fascinating, the relationship between Liza and Halston, because she really is the one person who gets to really see the vulnerability of him. What do you think it was that made these two larger than life figures work together so well?
I think they recognized the kindred spirit in each other, and we kind of nail it in the show. We say it out loud, but I didn't want to be Judy Garland's daughter, and he didn't want to be Jackie O's hat maker. We wanted to be Liza Minnelli and Halston. And a lot of people whose journey is, when they become icons, that is the journey, is finding a way to separate yourself from the pack. But I think they both came from these complicated childhoods, and you know that there's those people you meet at a bar or something, and you're with them for the rest of the night, and there's just something that recognizes a kindred spirit, a broken soul, somebody who needs a partner to jump into the unknown with. And they had happened to be somewhat untethered at the time and needed mooring, and that's what they found in each other. And I think he was able to be vulnerable with her because they began in vulnerability. He didn't have to be the strong designer, the boss. He didn't have to be the most glamorous, the one with all the answers. He could be vulnerable with her, and she could be vulnerable with him, because their fields were intersecting, but they weren't the same. Where he can't necessarily let his guard down with Elsa or with Joe, he could with her.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating because in so many, I mean, one of the things I think the series does so well is it does not shy away from how abrasive and sometimes downright cruel Halston could be, but for some reason with Liza, you see glimpses of that, but she shuts it right down. How is that kindred spirit? Why she was able to kind of like see through and navigate through his more volatile nature?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I think, obviously she had some experience with volatility in her life. I think she was able to recognize what needed to change for herself moving forward. And what I love about her in the series is that she has boundaries. She doesn't just let him do whatever he wants at all times. She'll allow him to be vulnerable. She'll accept him through his mistakes. But when he isn't going to fulfill his commitment at Versailles, that's a deal breaker for her. She's not going to say, okay, honey, let's just go home. She's getting in that car. She's getting him back in the room. And he allows that to happen because she means it. She's not going to go back on that. And I think it's like any good parent. You have to say what you mean and mean what you say and keep those boundaries. And where she maybe wasn't able to do that in a lot of areas of her life, and didn't get the chance to do that maybe with her mother or her relationships, she was able to do that with him. At least in the story we're telling, she was able to do that with him. And that, I think, allows somebody to really take the other person seriously and know this isn't something to be dealt with lightly. This is the crux of our friendship, and you don't give up.
I spoke to Dan Minahan, the director, last week, and this was such a passion project for him. He was so
Yeah.
passionate about it, and it took him so long to get it made. Talk about your working relationship with him.
I love Dan. I'm so grateful that he was at the helm of this enormous task for me. He, first of all, the least of which, his goal in casting Liza was to find a musical theater performer, which, to have somebody who advocates for that sort of representation is amazing, because that's not always what is sought after. And so I would not have stood a chance had he not been actively looking for somebody whose job this was. So I'm grateful for that. And then beyond that, the respect that he gave me for those tools and those talents that I brought to this role. He was always lifting them up, always encouraging them. And from the get-go, from the moment I was cast, we were on the phone having lunch, we were talking all the time, the open line of communication. And they're just, I say this when I talk about that director actor relationship. You don't stand on the bridge and jump off unless you know you're tied down to something. And so there is freedom in that tether. And when that relationship with the director is right on, and the carabiner is locked, and you have triple checked it, you can jump and you can go. And I don't know that I could have done most of the work that I did in this without knowing he was the grounding force in the whole thing.
You mentioned how this series was shot pre-pandemic, and then you shut down for a while, and then and I would imagine that being somebody from the theater, we're now approaching this point in the pandemic where theater is going to start coming back. What
Yeah.
what what has been kind of can you just talk about what the impact of this whole experience and the impact of the pandemic has really been for people in the theater? Because I think a lot of people still don't understand um,
Oh my gosh.
the
Yeah. I
impact.
mean, in so many ways, I was lucky to be working not in theater when this happened because um, television was able to recuperate a lot sooner because it's not such a group medium all the time. And yeah, our industry was decimated in a way that's unprecedented. Nobody would have known this could have happened. And New York has been through its challenges, and Broadway has certainly been through its challenges, but nothing that has completely knocked it out at the knees like this has. So I'm really proud of our industry, of our group of people who either stayed and fought or knew it was time to replenish and refill their cup so they could come back raring to go. And I'm looking forward to it. I think the greatest art we have has always been born out of adversity and challenge. And I hope that we are heading for an era where we're just not we're just not as entertained by stuff that isn't meaningful anymore. We choose where to put our time and we choose where to spend our money. And I want to be in the generation of theater that rises to that challenge and also makes the taste. I speak about this a lot. I teach high school and college age musical theater in my sort of off time. And I'm constantly looking for them to be better audience members because if they're better audience members, if they have better, higher taste, we get better art as well. So I think the combination of people being starved for this and wanting to be fed and us having had that time to recalibrate and figure out what we need, I'm hoping we're in a golden age of theater again.
Mhm. Is there has your career has definitely taken you back and forth between the stage and television and all that kind of stuff. So what projects are now the most attractive to you? What kind of work is just kind of feeding you?
Yeah, it's really cool because I'm in this position now that I fought really hard to be in and also was very lucky to kind of stumble into in some ways, where I get to be a bit pickier. And what I realized what is people always ask me, do you like theater or TV better? Do you like, they want to kind of pit the disciplines against each other. And the truth is, it doesn't really matter. It's where the work is, it's where the character is. And so I'm really in this position where I get to analyze the characters. And a few years ago, that's when I started making that move and saying it doesn't matter if it's a web series, if it's a podcast, if it's designing homes, which I started doing as well. I want to know where the role is that gets me excited. And the common ground I found was women who were willing to get their hands dirty, literally, figuratively, in any way, shape, or form, any way where I started to become really disillusioned with what I call the long suffering wife. The smartest girl in the room who's rolling her eyes all the time and letting the boy be a buffoon. I wanted to be the buffoon. I wanted to see what happens when I'm not the archetypal woman who gets things done. I want to see what happens when I mess up, when I trip, when I fall, when I eat dirt. And right around that time, I was the first role that I was offered around that was literally a character who ate dirt. It was a witch in the series Daybreak who's has a traumatic brain injury and is a post-apocalyptic witch who eats bugs and makes mistakes. And I was like, I guess I asked for this. So now that's what is attractive to me, and I will not audition for a role if one of the first descriptions about her in the thing is her looks. I'm not interested. If the people who write the role can't find anything else interesting about her, I don't want to play her. So that's sort of where I've been drawing the line and seeing. And it's hard to find, but when it is, it's really really rewarding. And that's what Liza was. She got just as dirty as the men. She got her hands in there and was able to do things that women at that time weren't really able to do, which is be in touch with her body and herself and not be labeled something unsavory. And I think that was really inspiring. So I learn a lot from every character I play, and that's what I'm taking with me from Liza.
Oh, Krysta, congratulations. It's a really just remarkable performance. And everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews with Emmy contenders throughout the season. Krysta Rodriguez from Halston, thank you so much.